Hello and welcome to the Manchester is Red podcast. My name is Steven Railston. I'm back. I'm your host today, and we are recording on the Monday afternoon, just under 24 hours after Manchester United defeated Leicester City 3-0 at Old Trafford in the Premier League. Now, my two brilliant colleagues were both in the press box at the game. Samuel Luckhurst and Rich Fay are present with me today. Samuel, how are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you, Stephen?
Good, man. I've had a good weekend, thank you very much. I was off for a few days for my birthday and nothing much happened, did it, across the 3 days, Rich, from Friday to Sunday? There was no stories involving Manchester United.
Yeah, it was a nice quiet one, wasn't it, for you to have off? So very jealous of that. And of course, happy birthday as well, Stephen. 18 are you now? 19?
Can you sing happy birthday for us, Rich, please? Can you sing it for us?
Do you want to sing odd, actually, which is completely unrelated? When I interviewed Noel Edmonds at university, he insisted that I wished him happy birthday, even though it wasn't his birthday.
That is bizarre.
Really, real odd man.
And I can't confirm it was my 19th birthday, Rich. Hopefully, my bus pass will expire soon. I'm just joking, obviously. Samuel, the game, 3-0. It is an overused cliche, but I think it was probably a game of two halves. I feel almost sick saying that. But yeah, Leicester came out the blocks very quick. They looked very impressive over the first 25 minutes, didn't they? De Gea produced two fantastic saves, and then Rashford got the goal. Second half, United put the result beyond doubt. But I feel it was another game where we're just going to sit here and praise Ten Hag for the changes that he made. We've done that quite often this season, haven't we? And it was another kind of genius game from him in that regard.
The first half performance, he said himself, it was rubbish. And when you're in a position of writing about a game, you wouldn't describe it as rubbish because it just seems a bit too basic. But it was an apt description. United were so disjointed, particularly in defence. I didn't understand what they were playing at, and Ten Hag was looking at them as if to ask, what are you playing at as well? The back line was the shape of a zigzag at times. It seemed like Luke Shaw was caught up too high up the pitch. The midfielders were caught between two stools. It felt like Leicester breached them time and again. The scoreline at half-time was a travesty. The difference when United, when Leicester got in behind United, was they were faced by the wall of David De Gea. When United breached Leicester, they were faced by Danny Ward, who is pretty much made of plaster. If you shoot at him, the ball is likely to go through him, and he's partly responsible for Rashford's brilliant form, because it was those two goals in the World Cup that have sparked this goal glut from him. And he was pretty porous for both of Rashford's goals yesterday. But the key change was Sancho coming on, and I think because United were 1-0 up at half-time, most probably suspected that Ten Hag would keep things the way they were, but he made the right call because they couldn't continue the way they were playing. Garnacho was on the periphery. I'm not quite sure whether he's had a really good performance as a Premier League starter yet for United. Obviously, he scored as a starter against Real Sociedad, but in the league, it's been a different matter altogether. And it wasn't necessarily the obvious substitution, but I think we all felt that if there was going to be a change, it would be Garnacho coming off. And Sancho was terrific. And again, I mean, Xavi tried to second guess Ten Hag in midweek by moving Araujo to right back and bringing Marcos Alonso in at centre back. And then every United attacker seemed to start in a position nobody thought they would start in. Rodgers, for a period of time, did have Ten Hag's number, but as soon as there was a bit of tactical innovation from United, and that was not just bringing Sancho on, but playing him as a 10, keeping Fernandes out on the right, that's where United started to exploit Leicester. And in the first half, they played better in the first 5 minutes of the second half than they did in the entirety of the first half, and the overall second half performance was excellent. In the end, they should have won by a greater margin, but going into that game, any United fan would have taken a 3-0 home win against Leicester, given how Leicester have been performing recently. They've had a couple of good results. They've been in quite rampant form in front of goal as well. So it was an ideal win, but it didn't feel like that, certainly at half-time, that United would be in a position where they could make wholesale changes after the hour with the game boxed off.
A comfortable win in the end, obviously, Rich, and we'll talk about the two goal scorers, Marcus Rashford and Jadon Sancho. Now, that was Rashford's 24th goal of the season, which makes it his best season of his career. I feel like we're running out of superlatives from this season. We just keep on praising the man as Ten Hag, to be fair, but Rashford has been genuinely sensational. So can you do you think nearing into world-class territory now, Rashford, because although he does need to sustain that form, he has been brilliant. But also, if you look at Sancho as well, if I add another question there, he was superb as an attacking midfielder, wasn't he? And it almost feels like his qualities, they quite suit that position, don't it? So what did you think of Rashford? Is he borderline into world-class? And fantastic to see Sancho again scoring, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, we're like a broken record on this podcast because United's the same old story every week, aren't they? There's still some issues, but they missed Casemiro. Rashford's scoring goals for fun. De Gea's making good saves. Rashford's, I wouldn't even say world-class status. I mean, he's beyond that. I mean, who is in form as much as Rashford in the world right now? If you're going to base it on that, he would get into any team. And at the moment, he's doing it at the top end of the Premier League. He's scored every single game. His record since the World Cup is absolutely obscene. And even the games where he's not scoring goals, which is very few, he's being directly involved in the goals anyway. So I think he is world-class, absolutely world-class, because every team in world football would benefit from having him in the starting lineup right now. I really don't think there is a case for him not to start for anyone, but he just looks like he'll score, and it's down to confidence, really, and just the way he took the goals yesterday. First one, he gets one-on-one, and Garnacho's there ready for the tap-in, but Rashford, as Samuel said, he's got Danny Ward's number, and he just smashed it beyond him in the goal, made it look so effortless. Same with the second one as well. It wasn't maybe the tidiest finish, but there's just never any doubt that he's got to put it into the back of the net, and that is what a world-class striker does. So Rashford is world-class by that definition. Sancho, I thought his link-up play was brilliant again, and I think that's what he benefits from. It was, for his goal, he plays 2-1-2s. He has a give and go with Rashford, has a give and go with Bruno Fernandes, and he just likes that, those quick interchanges. And in the middle of the park, he can do that. He can get on the ball a lot, move it on quickly, get the ball back in the central area. And he's got the ability to go either way. And, he is a right winger by trade, but his best football for United's come on the left, really. And when you play for the middle, it gives him the option. He can either cut inside onto his right foot, or he can go out to his left. And he just has that variety there. And he's pretty unpredictable when he plays as the number 10. So I think when the substitution happened, we were all expecting to have him go to the right. United would sort of go a bit more traditional with their approach. But Samuel Lyde noticed immediately Bruno Fernandes hadn't shifted from the right wing. And Sancho relished that. He tormented the Leicester defence, and he was just such a joy to watch as well, because he's got the love for football back, he's got the confidence back. They're both huge sort of successes of Ten Hag's man management style, and you just do wonder just where the ceiling is for both of them now, because if they can start playing well and ticking properly, United have 2/3 there of a world-class front three. Obviously, it's difficult to maintain this level of form, but what is so encouraging for United fans will be the fact that, yes, Ten Hag's summer signings have mostly been brilliant, but it's the players he's improved who are already at the club, and I think Sunday was an epitome of that, especially in the second half.
What do you think Rashford has for breakfast, Rich? Because I need some. Is he
it is difficult, isn't it?
Cocoa Puff, Fresh Krispies, what do you reckon?
I mean, what are you having for breakfast?
I have usually a Carabao energy drink, followed by a Mars bar. If we just move on now, then we'll look. Bruno Fernandes obviously got 2 assists, and I think if you look at both of your post-match analysis, I think you both mentioned Fernandes' role this season. Obviously, he's kind of been a de facto captain, with Harry Maguire spending the majority of his time on the bench. Samuel, we discussed it a lot last season, and we kind of talked about who would be the next captain, and I think we all kind of agreed Fernandes would be the perfect candidate. However, we talked about his petulance, maybe his attitude at times on the pitch, but those kind of concerns have seemed to have gone this season, haven't they? They seem to have disappeared, and it seems like an almost a certainty to be named official captain if Maguire leaves the club.
Yeah, certainty is the word there. The issue last season was that he wasn't playing well, and if you're not playing well, and your leadership, although he's always had that potential, if it's not the right kind of leadership, it's going to be difficult to command respect there. This season has been different. His numbers are not as good as in his first 18 months at United, but he's a better player now and he's playing better football. Again, a lot of people fixate on numbers and you can always skew a stat, but I think his contributions this season have been a lot more impressive than they were in those first 18 months when the numbers were off the charts at times, particularly for a player who'd come from a league where one of the reservations about Fernandes was that could he hack it in the Premier League. And what's really impressive about him is that he's had quite a few stints on the right now, and he's never inhibited by it. He will always do something from a different area or from that area that's going to have an impact on the game, whether it is creating a chance, whether it is scoring a goal, whether it is moving infield to get into that area. I think against City, he had a stint on the right. He obviously popped up with a goal from the middle. Against Barcelona last week, he's starting on the right. He creates a pretty decent chance within 20 seconds, and he certainly came up with the pass of the first half for the Weghorst one-on-one as well. His mentality is perfect. It's difficult to think of many footballers who share that mentality, and that although there'll be games where he can be frustrating or he won't be performing, the way he conducts himself is a dream for a manager. And I remember writing that last season in terms of the players that Ten Hag was likely to inherit, how although Fernandes hadn't played well, you had to dwell on the positive there, and the positive was that he had the right mentality, and you could see that Ten Hag would get something out of that. And I think Fernandes has, in his whole time at United, he's missed one game through injury or illness, and it was illness. It was getting to Tottenham last season when Ronaldo scored a hat-trick. So he's not actually missed a game yet for United through injury. And you look at some of the other players who've been injury prone, or they break down at any opportunity. And again, I don't think that's all necessarily physical. I think you've got to have the right the right mental outlook on these things, and be in the right headspace to get through such a grueling period. He told us the other week after they beat Forest in the League Cup, when a few of us spoke to him in the tunnel, he says he's not happy when he comes off in a game. He wants to play 90 minutes twice a week, and he's got the engine to do that. And there've possibly been times where he has looked like he's been run into the ground a little bit. But I'm going back to that 2020-21 season. I think it was him, Rashford and Wan-Bissaka. They were in, was it like the top 5 players in Europe for most minutes played? And it certainly took its toll on Rashford, who's carrying an injury. Wan-Bissaka's form wasn't particularly good that season, and Fernandes could have peaks and troughs in terms of his performance level, but he was still coming up with the goods. And certainly in pre-season, he did bristle a little bit when he misheard a question I asked him in Melbourne. He thought I said, would you weaken your game? I said, tweak your game. But there was certainly a bit of a debate as to whether he would be aligned with Ten Hag's style from how he saw things. And I think Ten Hag certainly trialled Donny van de Beek there very unsuccessfully in November, just to see what it would be like, what United would look like with a different number 10 there. But Fernandes is undroppable. There are no two ways about it. As I said to Rich yesterday, I was saying, is he a 7 or an 8? And Rich said he's an 8. And when you think about it, he created 2 goals. He should have had another assist for Diogo Dalot's goal. He's doing all that whilst playing out of position and leading a resurgent United who are in very, very good form at the moment.
If we stick with the breakfast theme, Samuel, what you're probably saying is Anthony Martial needs to copy what Fernandes is having for breakfast, doesn't he? With all those bloody injuries, he's always on the treatment table.
Yeah, he could probably do with some Weetabix or some porridge, certainly something that's going to toughen him up, whatever the weather.
Or some Carabao, as we've said, or some Carabao, that might help him. And Rich, I noticed you did your piece about Weghorst. It's been a fantastic leading up to the match. That's all of in the preview. We'll get more of it in on the Friday podcast, Samuel, no doubt. But Wout Weghorst, Rich, you did your kind of lunch piece around him today, and he's played in the number 10 position, which when it first happened at Leeds, I can imagine Ty and Samuel probably sat there, looked at each other and thought, what are we watching? Because everyone's eyebrows were kind of raised. Couldn't believe it, could we? Yeah, I can imagine. But he's actually been quite effective, hasn't he, Rich? Look, he's not the most talented. He's clearly a limited player. But he works his socks off, and Ten Hag clearly appreciates what he gives in that role. And it's not going to be a long-term answer, but he's definitely just a stopgap, isn't he, until the end of the season?
Absolutely, and he needs to firstly not be judged as United's solution up front, because there's a very limited pool of players they could have got in January. You're not going to be able to buy someone who's sort of in form anyway, scoring goals for fun, because why would a team sell him? And if they're going to sell him, they're going to command an inflated fee, which United just didn't have to spend. You know, they already are further ahead in their rebuild than they envisaged being at this stage. So money, is at a premium, and they didn't have that to spend. So Weghorst comes in. he's also maybe compared to the strikers who he's replacing, Marshall and Ronaldo, who, okay, didn't score many goals United this season, or haven't in case of Marshall, but are at least sort of known as goal scorers. That's where they've made their reputation. And, Weghorst has at least sort of managed to keep up with their low goal scoring sort of output, but he's more consistent in what you get from him in the final third. And that's the big difference. It says a lot that Ten Hag has stuck by him, even though he's had this goal drought. He's only scored that one. And, he couldn't hit a barn door yesterday. He really was poor in front of goal, but he was offering so much more. And he reminds me of when Giroud was at the 2018 World Cup of France, and he was getting so much hate. But Giroud's role was to facilitate Kylian Mbappe, who, leads him to glory. And Weghorst's presence means that Rashford can get the ball in the central areas more. It means that defenders have been dragged out of position. It means that they've got someone else to focus on. So Weghorst's role, yes, he wanted to be scoring more, but his actual contribution to the team is more than that. And obviously it has to be more than no goals because you can't get lower than that. But even yesterday, he won a couple of headers, which is an improvement from the game against Barcelona. You only have to look at him. You don't have to get into sort of hipster stats of how many high presses he triggered or activated or all that. Just watch him. He runs his socks off. He slides into tackles. He puts himself about. And that's what Ten Hag wants. He wants someone who has that work rate, who has that tenacity. And yeah, he's not the most talented United player, but he tries hard. And I know you can go down the passion merchant sort of route, but he was just tormenting. He was a pest to that Leicester defence because they had to put players on him because he is such a threat. He's a physical outball for United. But you look at the second goal, he drags Harry Souttar out of position, Fred puts the ball in behind him, Rashford beats the offside trap and scores. The third goal, if you watch it back, Weghorst makes a diagonal run down the left wing, brings two defenders with him, opens up acres of space, Rashford and Sancho play it down that wing. United cause the overlap, they score a goal. So Weghorst obviously will, to a degree, always be judged on his goals and his assists. Those are the metrics of any striker. But for now, as a short-term solution, he's fine. He's absolutely fine. And again, Ten Hag is the man who's paid to make these big decisions. He's got most of the big decisions right at United this season. And it says a lot that he is still sticking by Weghorst up front. Yes, he's not the most talented, but right now, he's the only one available, really, they've got. And he's doing a good job of it. He's not long-term solution. He doesn't have to be. And yeah, I think he just maybe needs a bit more respect on his overall game, but he certainly is poor in front of goal. And that might come with a more confidence. He might have a game where he gets 2 or 3 if the ball just falls that way, and he can be off then. But for now, you're not going to get anyone better, so you've got to learn to live with him, really.
Just for a bit of fun then, Rich, who would you rather have up front, a Weghorst or a Garlo? If we look at short-term January signings, who would you pick?
God, that's tough. I think myself and Samuel were saying yesterday that probably rather have Fellaini than both of them.
Yeah,
because he's more physical. He plays everywhere. He puts himself
get
about.
a few more goals.
And,
it's Fellaini, isn't it? You've probably get a few more
exactly.
goals.
I think Weghorst offers more to a team. Again, I'm not saying he's a better striker and goal scorer, but he offers more to the team than Igalo did.
I can see that. That definitely has merit. Someone who has offered a ton to this team, Samuel, over the last decade, look at that segue, that's why I get paid the big bucks, is David De Gea. And obviously, another clean sheet, some fantastic saves, draws level with Peter Schmeichel on 180 clean sheets for Manchester United. Now, can you put into words just what that achievement is, really? Because his consistency over the years, obviously there's always been doubts about the ball at his feet, and then, they still remain, really. But he's an outstanding shot stopper, isn't he? And he's world class on his day.
In terms of keeping the ball out of the net, he has been one of the best for 10 years, 11 years maybe. I think the turning point for him, people always look at it as that Chelsea game in, I think it was February 2012 when he made the save for Mata, and from that point on he did have a very good run in to that season, but the next season there was still some setbacks. It's easily forgotten that he was actually dropped for the third game of that season, quite harshly as well, I thought, by Sir Alex Ferguson. He was culpable, I think, for a Fulham goal, and all of a sudden he was out of the team the next week for Anders Lindegaard. But for a good 10 years now, the majority of that, he has been world class. I think between 2014 and 2018 he was the best keeper in the world. I'm sure people will, Manuel Neuer has plenty of aficionados, and he's been a phenomenal keeper as well, and it's certainly likes to get more involved on the ball, shall we say, outside his area in particular. But when it comes to shot stopping, De Gea has defied belief so many times. Probably more than Schmeichel, growing up watching him. And Schmeichel was obviously, he is still the greatest keeper in United's history for the teams he played in and the honours he won. 8 years, and they won, was it five titles, I think, and 2 doubles in that period and a treble. It's an obscene honours roll, and even in the seasons where they didn't win the league, they came damn close to it a couple of times. But it's still, I think, as much as goalkeeping has changed, the quality of De Gea's saves are sometimes they are on a different level, even to, you know, as I said, eras from yesteryear in Schmeichel's time. And it's, I mean, those saves yesterday, I'd say both of them are worthy of putting in the ultimate, you know, collection of a highlights reel of De Gea's time at United. But it would be a long video to watch because there have been so many. And he has been worked a hell of a lot more than Schmeichel. Obviously, his longevity is greater than Schmeichel's, but he has been a busy keeper because United have been a poorer team by and large for most of his time at the club. And it's still a pretty fascinating sliding doors moment. What happened on deadline day in 2015 and the fax machine, and then less than 2 weeks later, he's signing a new contract for United, and his future's never really appeared in great doubt since then. There've been a couple of occasions where it's come towards the end of his contract, or there's still, certainly in his second season, he as warm as he is towards Louis van Gaal now, he was not feeling much warmth towards Louis van Gaal towards the end of his time as manager of Manchester United. But Jose Mourinho secured his future, and as said, he's not been a keeper who's been in demand in recent years, and I think that's why United are quite relaxed about his contract situation. And it's also easy to forget that as dreadful as last season was, De Gea was actually very good, and he won the Players' Player of the Year, and that's the reason primarily why he's starting this season. It would have caused, you know, it probably would have caused too many ructions, and it might have been a bit too unstable for United if Ten Hag had changed the goalkeeper, even though people, and I wouldn't have blamed him if he had done. I think there was a case to do it. I think it would be interesting to see what does happen with De Gea over the next 6 to 18 months, given his contract situation. But he's been a phenomenal player for United, and there have been a couple of games this season. Last season it wasn't so much the case because United got pummeled most weeks or most months. But this season there have been a couple of pivotal games where he's been as much a match winner as the goal scorer. The West Ham game certainly springs to mind. Yesterday was a huge one as well, and as you said, the quality of those 2 saves yesterday was exceptional. In some ways, I know the Iheanacho header the ball was behind him when he clawed it back, but it didn't have too much pace on it. But the Barnes one, I'd argue he's not really got much of a right to save that. But not only does he actually, you know, get his arm out to stop it, but he gets it away out of harm's way, and sometimes that's the most important part of goalkeeping. It's not so much getting a hand onto the ball to stop in the shot, but you've got to ensure that it's not going to go anywhere near an opponent who could have a tap in.
Now, United have Barcelona on Thursday night, Rich, in the second leg of that Europa League playoff at Old Trafford, after the 2-2 draw in what was a fantastic game at the Camp Nou. And it's Newcastle in the Red Bull final on the Sunday afternoon at Wembley. We'll not include Carabao because they've had far too many name drops in this podcast so far. So, Rich, it's a huge week, isn't it, really? Those games are across, 4 days? Do you think it has the potential to be a season-defining week?
Yeah, it did feel like this was a week, not of like 3 cup finals for United, but very much a defining week in the season, because if United had dropped points against Leicester, then there was a narrative that, you know, by the end of the week they could be out of Europe, they could still be trophyless, and it could be stretching now beyond 6 years. No idea when that's going to maybe come to an end. But having beat Leicester, it feels like there is a real optimism again. United know that they can go toe-to-toe with Barcelona. They'll be confident of replicating that performance on Thursday night. United probably go into that second leg as well stronger than Barcelona do, considering they won't be we'll have Pedro Gavi available, and of course from the first leg as well, United should have Martinez back and Casemiro, Sabitzer can play together finally. So it does feel like a huge week because, if United, they knock out Barcelona, the momentum only builds again, and they really will feel like they can beat anyone. United will go into the knockout rounds of the Europa League as probably the favourites, despite coming through as second place in the group, because they will have knocked out Barcelona, who've just got the Champions League, La Liga leaders, and they just look irresistible at times now, Manchester United. Certainly, again, to look back at that Leicester game, that third goal was United at their very best. Just free-flowing, counter-attacking football, quality, quick interchange, and a world-class finish to top it all off. And I feel like this week still feels very pivotal because, 2 games can really affect the mood. And right now it feels very positive, and you might get a bit happy-clappy and you can say, they're in a title race, what else could happen this season? If they lose to Barcelona and then they play poorly in the cup final, it'll be doom and gloom again, and it will feel anticlimactic, which isn't fair. I think that right now you've got to look at the season how it is and say that no matter what happens, it has been one of success, really, because getting into the Champions League for next season is bottom line what United targeted to do. That was the holy grail. Get the lucrative money back of the Champions League, get into the top competition again, have it as that sort of bridge season, and then next season, that's when you build upon it. You try to close the gap even further, even closer, on the 2 teams above you, and you make a proper title challenge. So whatever happens this week, I think you've got to accept that United have had a good season. They have basically already achieved what they set out to do, because after the weekend results, it's not just United look good for top 4, they look good to finish third at the very least now, and it's whatever happens on top of this is a bonus. So I do think that obviously the results this week will shape the overall narrative of how successful United's season will be. Bottom line is that it has already been a success, but of course, if United can knock out Barcelona and then win a trophy at Wembley, that is an incredible week for the football club and for Erik ten Hag as well, because United probably won't get loads of credit if they win the League Cup, because it is still seen as sort of the second string domestic competition, but United haven't won the trophies. They've had so many opportunities to do so and have failed to capitalise. So to actually go that one step further would be a huge sort of culture shift from the mediocrity of the last few years.
Now, Friday the 17th felt like a significant date this month because the Glazers set their soft deadline for formal takeover proposals to be submitted. We obviously had 2 offers, one from Sheikh Yassim from Qatar, and we also had Sir Jim Ratcliffe coming in with the British bid. We've talked at length at this podcast really with the guys about, the takeover implications and the important points that need to be discussed regarding Qatar. Their records on human rights and homosexuality is still legal in their country, and we'll continue to discuss it. But we thought it was a good idea, just before we get our teeth stuck into that really, and talk about it again, to head down to Old Trafford to speak to some fans and to gauge their opinions. So here's what they had to say.
Well, I think let it be as it is. MU is doing fine, and the caretakers are taking good care of them. Let them continue. Why should we have some new players to come in? Or new buyers to come in? Not new players, new buyers to come in. Well, if I have the money, I'll buy over MU anytime.
Obviously, we've got a lot of speculation around the ownership at Man United Football Club. I think the fans make it clear week in, week out that, we want new owners in. Glazers, as many of us know, got the club in a lot of debt, and they've not really funded. Yeah, they've given us the players we want, we could say that, but it's not enough. Man United's a fan club, so I think, the owners coming in, yeah, we'll take the mick out of City, but that's just fans for you. But I think it'll be good for Manchester United going forward. On the other hand, it'd be nice to have home owners, if that makes sense, British owners. I don't like all these foreign owners coming in because, it just ends up getting all money talks, players go, look at Jack Grealish, 100 million, never, Haaland, but, game yesterday, it's proven, we've got the squad, we're going forward places now. Thursday's going to be rocking.
Coming over, maybe not knowing about the history of Man United and just building a whole new stadium and losing all the history and the really atmosphere of Old Trafford. But then maybe Sir Jim Ratcliffe came over he might have a bit more of an idea of what the fans want instead of just throwing money at problems the way Manchester City have done and buying players. So they're being good, obviously, to have more money in to buy players competing in the Champions League.
It's a tough one. We've had a lot of... It's been a hard couple of years prior, but I think Ten Hag's come in and he's turned a corner for the club. We're going in the right direction. Yeah, some fans are saying Premier League, maybe. I know I'm one that says if we keep going, then there's nothing stopping us. Slip-ups are happening at the top of the table. All we got to keep doing is winning. So, but the ownership, that'll all fall into place when it's all ready. But all us fans can keep doing is getting behind that club, pushing forward, and hopefully we bring some silverware on this weekend.
Now, it's always great to hear what the fans have to say, and it is bound to be a divisive topic. So we'll now move on and discuss the bid itself.
Officially, it would be interesting to see if anyone else does stick their head above the parapet, whether being private about this process is actually more beneficial than being public. I was quite surprised that Sir Jim Ratcliffe wasn't the first to formally confirm that they'd had that they'd made a bid, given that a spokesperson for Ineos had declared the interest in buying United back in August, I think it was, and then there was another statement after the Glazers announced they were open to selling the club in November. It was two very different statements as well that were released by Sheikh Hassim bin Hamad Al Thani, I believe that's his full name, and Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Obviously, the first statement coming from Sheikh Hassim was quite comprehensive and probably ticked most of, if not all, the right boxes for Manchester United fans. That the debt has been a bugbear ever since the Glazers took over the club in May 2005. So the pledge to wipe that completely is going to appeal to a lot of supporters, the majority of supporters. And with Sir Jim Ratcliffe's tone, it was interesting that there was a focus on the regulation in British football, which is, I believe that white paper is due in the House of Commons later this week. So the timing is this soft deadline. I think the timing of that and this white paper, they are coincidental, but they are also inextricably linked. And you're not going to get an entire fan base to agree on who they want the owner to be. I completely respect people's right to have an opinion on it. I don't respect trolls, bots, bigots, abusers, which is what some people stoop to, and also some people don't read properly, quite frankly. They will read pieces and they will look for something that isn't there and they'll run with that. And look, we have to have thick skins in this industry, and fortunately, of the interactions I receive on a daily basis, I don't think you can actually apply a fraction to how many of it I see, because I just pretty much see none of it, which is good for me because I think it's just as well. I'd advise anyone in the industry who has a profile that gets to a certain level where they get a lot of traction to do that as well. Sometimes you've just got to treat it like water off a duck's back, and this is going to be a very polarising topic, the likely takeover of Manchester United. Geopolitics are involved, of course they are. Look, Sir Jim Ratcliffe is a billionaire. There aren't many billionaires who get to where they are without being very ruthless individuals. Not every billionaire has got a heart of gold like Bruce Wayne or something like that. I think if Bruce Wayne was rewritten in this day and age, there'd be some bodies buried, not literally, before anyone jumps to that conclusion, but that's just how it works. I mean, Ineos have received criticism for fracking. Obviously it's a petrochemicals company. There've been accusations of greenwashing. Ratcliffe lives in Monaco, so he avoids paying taxes in the UK, and there was another point as well. He also supported Brexit, and he's still unrepentant about that. And obviously, Brexit has, I believe, it's been to the detriment of this country. I wasn't in favour of it. So, as I said, even if you may support someone, and I'm not declaring my allegiance to some Jim Ratcliffe at all because I'm a journalist, I've got to be impartial, but that's just an example of the nuance of the situation. And so there are pros and cons, but people are going to have a preference, and it will be interesting to hear those vox pops from Old Trafford that we've done and what other sites have done to gauge what the mood is like among matchgoers.
I mean, some of the abuse both of you guys have received over the last week's been disgusting. Nail on the head there, Samuel, very well said, and there's no need for it. There's some of the comments, as you say, people stoop to some abhorrent vitriol, really, and it's really sad to say at a time where I guess fans should be united and celebrating potentially something good in the Glazers leaving. We don't want to say that on social media at all. Rich, if we look at the statements a bit closer then, obviously Qatar want 100% of the club, and Sir Jim Ratcliffe would be looking at majority stake. Do you think that has the potential to be important? And as well, looking at it a bit wider, do you think it's just going to be a case of kind of who bids the highest of the Glazers? Do you think that's the way they're going to handle this process over the coming months and weeks?
I mean, if you're looking at it purely from a sort of business perspective, from the Glazers' point of view, then of course there's going to be an element of you want to take the highest bidder, really. You want to make as much money out of Manchester United as you can, so there's always going to be that element to it as well. Of course, the language used throughout the entire process has always been open to investment. There's always been, maybe not the elephant in the room, but there's always been the caveat that it might not be a full sale. Obviously, there is an understanding that would be preferable and that they can just take their money and leave and that's it. The Glazers and Manchester United are no more. But there's always still a sense that, maybe they don't just have the full sale. Maybe it is only partial investment and they seek some extra funds to help renovate the stadium, to help with the running costs of the club, and they relinquish some power. So it is a tricky one. And I suppose that since the soft deadline now, in the coming weeks ahead, we should get some more clarity on exactly who is still in the running, what it is they have actually offered to do, how much of the club they want. And it still is almost sort of that Dragon's Den pitch sort of time now, where they're trying to weigh up what everyone else can offer, how much they can give away. And yeah, I think there is always going to be an element of you can just sell and that's it. You don't have to deal with the club anymore. You don't have to run the club anymore. You make a big profit off your leveraged buyout of the club anyway, and it's a new era at Manchester United. But there's a reason why the Glazers have held on to the club for so long. It's because they like having the club. They enjoy having the power of it all, and they might seem disinterested as owners and not invest their own money in it, but there is a bit of clout to saying you own Manchester United, arguably the biggest football club in the world. You still get your dividend payments and you still profit from the club personally. So there's a lot of different cogs involved in it all, but it was interesting, like you said, the two sort of contrasting statements there. And you can see, I mean, to remove any sort of partisan opinions and to boil it down to what was there in black and white on paper, you can see why lots of fans would be interested in what Qatar was promising, because they were ticking every box of what Manchester United fans would want. They want to have the most successful team on the pitch. They want a stadium that is new and is elite and leads the way in football. And they want the training ground as well to be renovated as well. And there's an ambition from both parties to make Manchester United successful again. I thought Jim Ratcliffe made a good point, though. He emphasised that he wants United to be winning Champions Leagues again. And that was always something that was maybe held against even the great United teams, that they just didn't win enough in Europe. So that is maybe looking at it from, I suppose, a legacy fan's point of view. I mean, you can say you want to win the Champions Leagues, but it's going to effectively be the Super League in a few years in a completely different competition as well. So it's an interesting one. There are sort of two sort of divides. I think that there are probably fans who are still in the middle and haven't really made their mind up on who they'd like to take charge. But I guess ultimately, bottom line is the fans don't decide anyway who takes over the club. Yes, you can have a preference. Yes, there might be one party you're aligned with, but at the end of the day, it's not the fans' decision to decide who buys Manchester United.
In terms of how the process moves forward, then Samuel, obviously we've had the soft deadline there on Friday, and we've just basically said it's at this point, unless someone else comes in, it is a two-horse race. What kind of happens now then? You've talked about the data room in your articles, obviously they look at the financial information. How does the process move forward, and when could we expect an announcement, for example? Fans will be hoping before the summer. Is that realistic?
I think that is realistic. The way it was phrase to me was that the bids at the moment are only indicative, and it will be once all the bidders are confirmed and they can get into the latter stages of the process that someone told to me they'll go into a data room where they'll be able to see all the relevant financial information, and then they can thrash out whatever deal they want there. If they're going to proceed with it, if they're not going to proceed with it. I think if it is a 2-horse race, which is what it's shaping up to be, then you'd imagine both of them are going to be in this to the bitter end. Sir Jim Ratcliffe that's been his character all his life. If he wants something, he will do his utmost to get it. So I don't really see anyone conceding early at this stage. So yeah, I think when it gets to that point where all the bids have been submitted and they're in this data room, as you mentioned there, they'll be able to understand the value of assets, the debts, etc. So there's a lot to write about it at the moment. There may be a relatively quiet period now while they go through all the numbers, and then we might eventually get a clear idea of who the next owners of Manchester United are going to be. It still wouldn't surprise me if the Glazers do somehow cling on or have some involvement with the club, but you've got two very big hitters who have declared their interests and have publicly declared their interests, so the likelihood would be a complete sale at this point. And yeah, as I said, it might be a little quiet for a period now because the soft deadline has passed. The two names have come out the woodwork, although Ratcliffe came out the woodwork a number of months ago, and it maybe our lives will be a little bit easier just focusing on the football. It's a different field altogether when you're getting into takeover chatter, and it's almost a bit of a reversal with Chelsea in that they had to be put up for sale because of an illegal war that was started by Russia, and in terms of the ethics and the morals of it, given what Roman Abramovich had got into with Vladimir Putin, you couldn't really get much worse than that, especially some of the scenes that we saw on the news and continue to see on the news in Ukraine. And it was last year, it was depressing that you still had Chelsea fans chanting Abramovich's name when they really ought to have known better.
Samuel just mentioned, if we look at on-field then again, Rich, just to wrap it up, do you think this will affect on-field performance over the next week, so the next month? I know Ten Hag kind of talked about it, didn't he? Do you think it has the potential to affect the players' mindsets, or how plans will be kind of thought about for the summer?
I mean, Victor Lindelof said after the game yesterday that they've not really given it any attention yet because the schedule is so intense. It's just been so focused heavily on the matches that they haven't thought about it yet, and they've not maybe discussed it. I mean, you'd expect that they're certainly aware of what is happening, and particularly there maybe will be behind the scenes some sort of discussion internally between them and their WhatsApp groups, etc. But they are footballers and they are paid to play football, and right now that is their primary focus. So I don't think so. I think it is again another testament for Ten Hag, another test for him as well going forward to keep the players focused on the task in hand. I mean, he will inevitably be asked the questions, and there might be some awkward questions as well in the weeks ahead about the takeovers and the possible sort of implications of that as well. So I think it is something that the players will be certainly aware of, but you can understand why everyone at the club at the moment is just giving you the sort of boring answers. The questions have to be asked and they have to be answered, but you can understand why everyone internally is perhaps just batting away the chance to talk about it by just giving straight answers of, we're focused on the football, we'll move on, and they'll discuss it when something's more formal as well, because you've also got to remember that at this stage it is so early on that you can't be coming out either sort of making anything too firm a statement, because it is just so early, and it can affect the entire sort of balance of the club at the moment. And for United, they will very much want to ensure that over the coming weeks it is the football that takes centre stage and continues to be talked about, because right now they are on to something good, and I think Ten Hag and his players do deserve that to be a primary sort of subject matter of discussion. But of course the elephant in the room is this takeover, the likely takeover of Manchester United. So I guess it is just a case of waiting and seeing what happens and taking any updates from there.
It's never dull, that's for sure, on the bright side of things. But I think we'll wrap up there. I'm off to go count my check for my Carabao name dropping, the sponsorship.
Again,
so
there's another
thank
one.
you very yeah. Is that 6 or 7? Just wait till Friday's podcast ahead of the game. So thank you very much, Samuel. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Stephen.
And thank you, Rich.
Thank you very much.
Although you still haven't sung happy birthday, so do you want to go ahead?
No, I'm
Yeah,
okay.
polite decline.
I'll do the
And
Vicar
thank you
Lindelof.
very-
I'm okay. I'm focused on the football.
Very diplomatic answer, of course. And thank you very much to listeners. As usual, head across to our YouTube where we're ploughing on subscribers. Like, comment, and complain that Rich did not sing happy birthday. Take care.